Yes, a very good evening to all our friends right here, and hope that everyone is feeling good and feeling well right here for this wonderful Tuesday itself. So my name is Hui Jie, and today once again we are right back again to share with you about this thing called the market outlook of Singapore. Of course, we hope to also bring you things from Asia and of course globally as well. So right here for today, a lot of people are thinking, hey, we are having the news of coming back into people of five, a group of five can be gathering and stuff like that. Business seems to be coming back more and more. And at the same time, last year alone itself, due to COVID itself, right, there's a lot of people who started new business, and you are in this crossroad of thinking, since I'm having a full-time job, or maybe you don't have a full-time job, if you're thinking to start a new business, a lot of time people will always think of, okay, I'll start something online, or I'll start something to go and open a shop and just try out my luck and plan myself and stuff like that. But have you ever wondered why people can run a business successfully? Sometimes it's actually through a lot of guidance from the peer, from the industry, or sometimes actually from a package solution. So right here for today, what we're going to be deep dive into is actually this thing called the franchising business, and how you can actually build yourself a multi-million business itself, or maybe something a little bit more successful and lesser stress with the path of franchising. So with that, without further ado, right now, I would like to actually share with you the guest for today. Let's pan our screen to the slide itself. Okay, so today we have a guest right here. He's actually the president of our Franchising and Licensing Association of Singapore, and he's also the CEO of Malaysian United Industries Berhad. Okay, and right now let's also give our loudest applause. I know that right now we can't applause and all that, but just give all your hearts and all. If you're on Zoom or you're on Facebook and all that, give us a thumbs up right now, and let's welcome Mr. Andrew Khoo.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, you really look very stylo today. I didn't know that all the people in franchising are so stylo as well. Okay, Andrew, I understand that you have been chairing the presidency for the association for 3 years now. So how's your journey, and how do you even stumble into franchising association?
Well, I always like to tell people that franchising is a great way for people to run their own business. There's a lot of people, especially even now during a pandemic, where they want to try their hand at becoming an entrepreneur. But it's not always so easy, right?
Yep.
So I would like to say a nice entry point is to do a franchise business, because you have a ready-made business model, a proven concept, and you can learn the ropes that way. So I think for people who are seriously considering that type of avenue, I would encourage them to look at franchising or licensing.
I see. But I also understand that a lot of people will say things like franchising might be a very high cost. Is that true?
No, I mean, not necessarily. It really depends on the scale of the franchise and the brand. If it's a very established big unit type model, of course you can run into the millions.
Understand.
In terms of the franchise fee. But there are smaller type of franchise models, and even local ones that have been quite successful. And the setup cost of those could be, and franchise fee all in, 100, 200,000.
That's quite affordable, because we all know that rental in Singapore will already go more than half of it already with all the deposit and all that. Okay, so before we really go into deep dive into the franchising business model, understand that you're also the CEO of Malayan Industries, right? Yeah. So would you mind to share with us more the ListCo in Malaysia itself, and what is your involvement in Singapore, and how do you end up in Singapore in a way?
Yeah. Prior to the pandemic, we live in Singapore, but I would be working in Malaysia, KL. So I would fly there every week. The company I'm with is a listed company in Malaysia, and we are multi-sectorial. So we cover things like hotels, hospitality, retail, and food. And we also have certain investments in Singapore. One of them being Benjamin Barker, which is a franchise concept. Also, so they do have a few franchise units in Malaysia and Cambodia. So, and also our Laura Ashley previously is also a franchise business. So that's the reason why was approached to, and I joined the FLA, the Franchise Licensing Association, and I'm the current president. And the whole purpose is, of course, to further the exposure and publicity of the community, because we feel that this is a very viable form of business for Singapore.
I see. Okay, I also understand that before going into franchising and stuff like that, you've been helming a lot of ListCo, yeah? From UK ListCo, and with a background of law. How do you, how's your journey for career? I believe you have like 20 years, right, in the career industry and all that. So how was the journey so far?
Well, I mean, I think I would say that I have a global perspective. I've been very fortunate to have lived in many countries, Australia, UK, Canada, the US, and like you say, I've been fortunate to sit on the board of listed companies overseas, Australia, UK as well. So that gives me a very broad perspective, which I try to bring to the table. When I run the listed company in Malaysia, we try to take best practices from all the various countries, and we always want to be ahead of the game. We want to be dynamic, evolve, and learn new things, and try to incorporate new ideas into our business practice. Franchise businesses should do the same thing. You may have a template, but you always want to incorporate the latest and the best techniques.
Okay, that's cool. That's really, really interesting. So let's pan the screen back to the slide once again. I just wanted to share something about FLA itself. So this is actually some of the background from our guest speaker. As you can see that he's really all around. Okay, if you want, you can pause this if you're on the screen and all that and watch it later on. Okay, so just a little bit of airtime for FLA. I think FLA is really doing something really, really good. Just now when I was having some side chat with Andrew and all that, I heard that they are going into things like a PCP program that's helping to groom franchising professionals in Singapore. So Andrew, why don't you share with us about FLA and what are you doing at this juncture of the year itself?
Okay. I mean, FLA was actually established in 1993, and as the official voice for the franchising and licensing industry in Singapore. We are also the founding member for the World Franchise Council.
Wow.
And so we are really the apex association here that represents everything franchising and licensing. We also collectively engage with companies, but we also engage with all the various TACs and all the government boards and stat boards as well. So we've been established for well over 28 years. We have over 130 members, of which 40%, roughly 40% is F&B, another 20% is education, enrichment, another 15% is lifestyle and services, and then also 12% for retail, and then the rest would be other professional services and consultants. So we have a very diverse mix. So we do represent a very good cross-section of everything related to franchising.
Okay, let's deep dive into the company itself. This is all the things that you're mentioning just now. I saw quite a fair bit of quite big brands. It's really a lot of education and stuff here, and also F&B and all. So anything that you would like to share over here in terms of how's their project going and so far?
Yeah, I mean, the main things that we do as an association, we can break it down into a few things. So one is we have our flagship FL Asia, which is our trade exhibition every year. Okay, last year, of course, we did it virtually because we had to, but typically it's a physical show, and I think going forwards it will be a physical plus, of course, a virtual show. So normally we would have about 200 participating brands, representing more than 20 countries, and we would also have about 8,000 visitors. Okay, so that's the FL Asia. So if you're really interested to see some interesting concepts up live, then I would encourage all of you to do attend the show.
I still remember it's at Marina Bay Sands, right?
Yes, correct.
And it's like super crowded.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and a lot of free sampling of food, huh?
Well, you know, food and sampling will always draw a crowd, right?
Yes,
Huh?
yes. I recall every time when I walk down the aisle, especially example if they're selling their franchising for like fried chicken, you got lots of fried chicken. You go to the next one, there's like different food stuff. Yeah, it's really amazing.
I mean, you know, you have Korea Pavilion or Japan Pavilion.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, it will definitely attract a crowd because people like to see the latest concepts. And of course, I mean, and they get to see the food and all the different things as well.
And taste the food.
Of course. That's very important, right?
Yeah. Okay, so one also, the milestone that I saw over here that you all actually recently obtained your ATO, which is called the Approved Training Organization by SkillsFuture. That's another milestone on top of the PCP, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that all of you are really, really excited, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so apart from the trade show FL Asia that I mentioned, of course we have FLA awards. So that's the awards that to recognize all successful franchises in Singapore. And of course we also have our members engagement. So things like networking sessions, seminars, webinars, workshops. And then of course what we try and do also is capability building.
Yep.
Capability building. So this is where we try to train, upskill, you know, people who are interested in really taking a serious career pathway into franchising. So some of the things we do a WSQ, Essential Franchise Management course, which is a 3-day course. We do a Professional Conversion Program, PCP. Okay, that's a 12-day Professional Executive course. So these are people who, these are really courses for people who really want to learn more and become franchise experts, you know. And so, yeah, and recently, of course, we also got our ATO status. So we're really going to curate a whole range of specific programs around franchising. You know, so that's how we build capabilities, really.
I see, that's amazing. Maybe you can come up with your advanced certificate or diploma down the road.
Yes.
Great one. Okay, so today I actually already start to have people posting questions. Thank you so much. Keep it going. But meanwhile, for friends, if you do have more questions, this is actually for the topic for today, which is actually how to build and discover a good franchise opportunity and step to bring new ideas to the table in this endemic world, business world in Asia. Okay. Of course, if you have any other burning questions, feel free to throw it to us. Today is actually a fire chat, side chat style, which we actually welcome anyone to throw in any question and it will all be answered live right here, okay? So let's deep dive right now to the first question for today itself, right? It's actually, what are the top 5 most popular franchise pre-COVID, okay? And I do hear that just now business, like things like F&B and all that, but any case study that is actually the most successful one and something that is totally unexpected? Yeah.
Okay, so let me just talk briefly about in a Singapore context, and then maybe a little bit more, then I'll draw certain themes from the US. Okay, but so in Singapore, which is slightly different from the US, which is probably the best country in the world in terms of developing franchise and having a franchise framework. Okay, so in the US, a company does not need to register as a franchise. Okay, so there's no specific regulations around franchising. There are no franchise-specific laws, so it's a bit different from other countries like the US. So that, of course, has certain advantages, right? Because there's little regulatory burden for franchisors, and it's very easy to get the paperwork ready and to start a franchise within days. Okay, so but what Singapore does require is a proof of concept. Okay, so you need to have a business, an actual physical business, so that you can franchise. So that would be the minimum, I would say. So the most popular, generally, from a broad standpoint, would be food, because, like I said earlier, it's a low setup cost, normally about $100,000 to $200,000. So pre-COVID, okay, I would say the top 5 franchises pre-COVID, one would be Grab and Go. So Grab and Go food category. So things like bubble tea, and Mr. Coconut recently has been very popular.
Yeah, the queues are crazy,
there,
amazing,
right?
man.
Yeah, I mean it tastes great, I have to admit. So, but the queues there, you know, it's quite, you know, the one I go to is the one in Junction 8, and it's crazy, you know. the queues, right? It's the longest queue there, I think, in
I
Junction
think
8.
bubble tea trend is over. Now it's coconut drink.
Coconut, that's right. So that's one. So secondly would be quick casual dining. So QSR and quick casual dining. So things like Ya Kun and Subway has been quite popular. So casual dining. So and then third would be enrichment programs. So things like Kumon, I Level, for example. Okay, that would be third. Then fourth would be laundromats. So things like Wonder Wash, DIY laundry. And then fifth would be gym franchises. So things like Anytime Fitness, F45 training. So these would be the top 5 most popular pre-COVID. So, okay, so but largely, if you look at franchising globally and in the US, the most successful category of franchises would be in the QSR category. So fast food and QSR, quick service restaurants. That would be the largest category. But interestingly, the profit margins, this is drawn from studies from SageWorks in the US. Profit margins of that QSR category is only about 4%, whereas the profit margins for other categories like real estate companies, accountancy, professional consulting services, that type of category is closer to 20%. So just an interesting footnote there.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so that's something that's unexpected. A lot of people also say that education is the best one to go for. Is that true?
Well,
Recession-proof?
well, especially in Singapore, I would have to say it's a very established and fast-growing segment of the business. So it can be quite profitable. Having said that, there's two sectors that have been affected by the pandemic. So one would be the fitness franchise, due to the safe distancing measures and some of the CBs.
Yes.
Okay, so that has obviously impacted operations. And I think enrichment franchises also have had to transform. And they have to go down the whole hybrid teaching in terms of their resources and the way they roll out their programs. So yes, enrichment is a very popular category, but I think going forwards, they would have to look at some form of hybrid model.
Okay, that's indeed a good sharing. I think it's a very good perspective for pre-COVID, but now this is, I think everyone is waiting for as well. What is the top 3 franchise business post-COVID? I think we are more interested what's going to happen next, right? Yeah, in the franchising industry.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, of course, we are not exactly post-COVID, okay? So we're still in a COVID situation. So some of this is still a bit of conjecture. But what we see during this period is that the food, grab and go food, which is the bubble tea, which is impulsive purchases, especially amongst the young, and things like Mr. Coconut, is still going strong. So we foresee that area of grab and go food will still be popular and will still be resilient even post-COVID. So that's one. And then I think technology related franchises post-COVID. So once again, that's digital learning, using apps, enrichment apps from overseas, for example, Lingo Ace. So that type of franchise business, I think will be quite popular in the future. And then in the food category, we see things like premium burgers coming in, hawker type cuisines. So a bit more niche, a bit more defined in terms of their positioning. I think we see that becoming still popular, and that will remain popular post-COVID.
Okay, cool. And I also see there's a lot of salad shops starting to grow here and there, yeah?
Well, I mean, this whole salad phenomena has been quite popular for the last 5 to 10 years, actually, to be honest, and especially in the CBD. So I think this is an interesting one to look out for because, as we all know, there has been a bit of a hollowing out in the CBD, in terms of office workers. So I think there may be some consolidation or there may be some movement in that area. And maybe Salad will start moving towards more of the heartland malls.
Okay, great. That's a good perspective to see. And next one, due to COVID, a lot of things are changing. So can you share with us something about the involvement of F&B, retail, like grocery? I saw some grocery franchising recently from Chinatown, hospitality, education, professional services, and also healthcare and wellness businesses.
Yeah, so, what we see, I think this has been also been kind of mentioned, is that digital transformation is going to be very important for all businesses in all sectors. And so by all accounts, digital transformation can take up to 40% of all IT spending. Okay, and this sort of digital adoption can range from everything from cybersecurity to AI to automation, all of those kind of things lah. So according to a Harvard Business School report, so businesses who fail to adopt digital technologies post an average 3-year gross margin of about 37%. Okay, but those that are willing to adopt all things digital can post an average of 55%. So obviously it can make a bottom line impact to your business. And that's why I think the government has been encouraging companies to embrace going digital. Okay, so when it comes to specifically for the different sectors, so we do see that there's going to be more digitization in all the franchise businesses. For example, contactless. You can see now there's a fast adoption of everything contactless, because of the pandemic, right? In the F&B business, you have things like cloud kitchen, maybe even robot drones. You have home DIY cooking. You have some group buys. People are group buy. Yes, that kind of thing.
Shopper click.
Correct.
Shopper vision.
Correct. So you can already see that the business model is slowly evolving, and it has to because of what's happening with the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So that's F&B, and then also retail. In a retail food space or grocery space, you see things like live selling, live streaming, Facebook Live, social media, group buys again. Okay, so you do see these kind of things happening, and then as I mentioned earlier, education. You have the hybrid learning.
Yeah.
Okay, of course, there's going to be more enhanced technologies because of the social distancing and all that kind of thing lah. So yes, so basically, all businesses would have to continue to evolve as we learn to live with the pandemic that will become an endemic.
Actually, the pandemic created quite a fair bit of a good business opportunity as well. Things like there's this website who so-called monopolize on the day use hotel. There was one period of time, all the hotels are all stopped, then they have this day use. So someone registered dayuse.sg and he did pretty well. There was an article about him that is drawing quite about 5-6 figures just on commission base. So is that can be done as a franchising model or like it's more just new business ideas?
Well, it can be either franchising or licensing. You would need to have
approval, right?
You would need to have a model that works financially.
Yeah.
You would need to package it into a very tight solution with very clear SOPs or framework, and then from there you can scale. Then it can be franchisable. Yes, I mean the short answer is yes. And of course, because of the pandemic, it creates disruption. And anytime there's disruption, it creates opportunity. It's a question of whether one can spot the opportunity and go for it, right?
Yeah, and I like that. That actually translates to 危机等于商机。Way, right? Obstruction, right? Okay, let's jump straight to question number 4. This is something that a lot of people also always keep asking me. Like just now when we share about different ideas, like example, people doing group buy, they're just taking someone else's product to sell it, and like day use hotel, they're just getting permission from the hotel to place them on their platform to allow for day use. So it seems more like distributor than franchise, right? So is there any way to kind of differentiate them, or is it because due to COVID or due to digital transformation, these two are blurring up and maybe coming into a new model or new industry by itself?
I mean, there can be a blurring of the lines, okay? But there is also still a distinction. between a distribution model and a franchising model. Okay, so usually distributors, right? They will take products from manufacturers, and then they will have to find their own channels and then to resell. Okay, so that's a resale model there. Whereas for franchising, right, you have to typically set up the concept, whether it's a store or physical or whatever, you have to set up a clone. You would have to clone the concept. So there is a slight distinction there in terms of how it's executed, the execution of this. Okay, and then so distributorships, normally there's a legal agreement, okay, which allows the company to sell the product lah. So that's the distributor agreement. Whereas the franchise is a right to sell the company's products in a specific location using the system, the business system or whatever. So there are differences actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you actually encourage people who are distributing people's product to, slowly march into a franchising model and expand their brand like everywhere? It's similar like, in the past, Ya-Kun only start with one store. Then because of the second gen, third gen, they start to realize that the power of franchising to grow, that's how they grow so many stores.
I think the important thing is what works for the brand. Okay, as long as you're very clear, okay, it's important to have a very clear proposition. And then, because if there's no clarity, it's very hard to scale. It's very hard to put forward a persuasive proposition for your distributorship model or for your franchisees. So either system can work. So it's not that one is better than another in terms of which one is better for scaling. It's a question of actually what is the best fit for your product or service, and have clarity around the framework, and then stick and be focused with that. So it's very difficult to say that franchising is better than distributorship because it's better in terms of scalability. It's not as clear cut as that. So it really depends on the type of product or service. Yeah.
Okay, because actually, if you look at distributionship, right, some people also say things like, let's say the $2 shop, or what's that called? Yeah, the shop that sells very cheap stuff. They are also almost like a franchising style. I heard that it's actually formed by a group of family members, and they own different outlets and all that. But they are actually starting from distributionship, then it became a brand.
I
right?
see.
It's called what? Safe. I can't remember the name.
Of course. So, it's possible, yes, that it can evolve along the way. But if you want to do that, it has to come with a certain proposition and a certain value proposition. You want to be a franchise, you want to do it properly. So make sure you have the proper franchise templates, you have the business model, the manuals. Otherwise, if you don't have the basic foundations of that, you can call yourself a franchise, but you will not be a franchise that can sustain and last very long, right? So I think it's very important. You just don't want to call yourself a franchise just for the sake of calling yourself a franchise, so that you can attract franchisees. If you don't really have a proposition that you can give that's win-win, it will not be a very sustainable business.
Understood. That's indeed really, really true. I think that's really, really important. So right here, would you like to share any new model and new trends of franchising? So let me just throw you one scenario. So I know of this client, they are called Springleaf Prata Shop. So I believe that most of y'all have tried their food before, if not have heard about them. They are also from like cashew curry, banana leaf and stuff like that, okay? So what the new business owner itself, right, the second gen, what they did is they basically started their different outlets, different franchising outlets, right, through this model of JV model of franchising. So that means they don't actually charge you like 100K, 200K of startup fund, but instead the 100K, 200K became a startup capital. And that startup capital will translate into a certain shareholding among the incoming investor that became a shareholder versus the original owner or the brand owner itself. And what happened is actually, right, after having this so-called profit sharing, the HQ, which is the back office itself, and also the central kitchen, is still owned by the brand owner, while they still continue to supply food, supply raw material and stuff like that into every single franchisee or so-called JV partnership. So is this kind of model something you recommend, or is it too innovative? But surprisingly, the restaurants are doing very well with this model. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your thought? Yeah.
Okay, so I think, is quite innovative, I have to say. You know, because this is almost a hybrid model where you are giving some equity, share ownership. You know, so your franchisees have a vested interest, more of a vested interest in and they take more ownership in the business, which is this kind of model, I suppose, right? So it's a model that can work. So I think going forwards, you will see maybe more of these interesting things because I've heard different ideas out there. For example, you know, to reduce the initial outlay for franchisees. Some franchisors may consider reducing capex investment. They may do some form of equipment leasing. You know, this is to defray costs, for example. So, you know, because maybe you have the right individual, but maybe they don't have the necessary funds to do their first unit. So you try to find ways around that. So I think these are interesting ideas, and it's all workable. The important thing is, I think, to have very good clarity around this and have the proper legal documentation around this type of framework, I think is important.
That's where the licensing part comes in, right?
Yes, either licensing or franchising, but have the proper franchise agreements. Have a lawyer who is experienced in drafting these things, put it together, especially if you're trying to come up with an innovative way of doing franchising.
Okay, all right. So we come to the next question here. What are the differences between direct selling? You know, there's a lot of nutrition product right there, out there in the market. I actually know of this company. I will not name who they are because I think they are doing quite a fair bit of multi-level marketing kind of style already. But that, hey, join my company. I'm an e-commerce company. I'm like a marketplace. You just have to so-called pump in $10,000 credit. They name it as credit. So when you pump in $10,000 as a credit, right, I give you 10,000. On top of that, you get a certain shareholding as well. And on top of that, you are actually a franchisor. So you can sell this marketplace using your own platform that is actually hosted by the HQ itself to recruit your next downline. So when your next downline buy anything, buy another 10,000 of credit, you get a certain percentage. And when that downline continue to find someone else, you get a certain percentage as well. So you just go on and on and on and on. And I'm not very sure where does all the credit goes. It seems that a lot of people are not even spending it. So it became a business model that is trying to say that you are franchising my online business. You don't need to start your own e-commerce website. You just leverage on mine. You don't have to find any products. No drop shipping, nothing, scrap those things, you just sell my product. Okay, so that is like something a bit confusion to consumers, right?
I don't know. I mean, what you're describing sounds like multi-level marketing in a way, right?
But they sell it as a franchising business.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, there are things like, for example, you can direct sell many things, right? Like you say, nutritional products, whatever lah.
Yeah.
And you know, and so the differentiating factor can be quite thin. Okay. So, but I think the important thing to note is that to call yourselves a franchise, you know, you have to book the sales revenue and pay a royalty fee. Okay, so that's the way normally it works. You know, and that's why it's a bit tricky in Singapore because we're not covered by statute. You know, as I said earlier in the program, right? Whereas the US, there is a franchise. You know, you have to follow a proper franchise agreement. Everything is very, very tightly controlled. But Singapore, not so much, right? But the important thing is this: so a franchise, you have to book the sales revenue as a royalty, right? Whereas, if you are not doing that, you're booking the revenue and paying the downline commission. That's slightly different from collecting royalties and paying the franchisor. Okay, so that's one way you can see whether it's a franchise or not lah. Yeah.
So I think they're just trying to use this franchise as a beautiful words to instead of telling them and making them feel that it's an MLM business.
Correct. I mean, it's partly marketing. I suppose the way they are putting it out, it sounds like a franchise, but it's not exactly a franchise. And technically, it's not a franchise because you're not booking royalties. You know, in fact, you're actually paying commission down the line lah. So it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So how about the second statement over here? Like example, franchise business is good, but individual traditional brands nowadays are also embarking on their e-commerce journey. Some of them are getting someone else to help them sell, like Shopper Vision and stuff like that. So they're also doing their own small little distribution and, you know, helping people to sign some unofficial documents to help them resell or franchise in a way. So do you see this trend harming the franchise actual industry itself?
Okay, well, I mean, every business needs to, of course, have an e-commerce journey, and they have to go online and have omni-channel, all that. So that's clearly understood, right? But the question is, how do they go about doing that? And you know, this is why over time, franchising sometimes around the world, you can have a, if it's not closely supervised, you know, it can affect the name of franchising, right? Because a company or brand product can put itself out to be a franchise when in fact it's not even a franchise, right? So in a way, I think that's why FLA is in existence. You know, we have members that's part of FLA, right? We represent over 200 brands, 130 and companies and over 200 brands. And we actually vet our members before they can become a member of FLA. In a way, it's also to give a bit of an endorsement. You know, we've done a bit of vetting on that. We don't just let anyone come in and simply say that they are a franchise, you know, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, buyers have to beware lah. I mean, people can put themselves out to be a franchise, but you really have to do your due diligence to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into.
So is there any small little like tutorial videos and all that on FLA that is online that people can read through?
Definitely, I think later there's going to be some our website. We have our social media. We have our Facebook.
Great.
So please do contact our secretariat, our team. If you have any questions related to franchising, we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Sure, we will flash that out again later on. But right now, let's continue to question number 7 again. So there are more and more companies who are going online, servicing like local and global market. And are branding, trademark, and licensing important? Let's say they are not a franchising business yet, but now they're just anyhow selling online, you know, because of survival. So how would they start thinking to so-called construct their brand? Do a proper trademark and protect themselves as a brand, and to do a licensing endorsement or franchising endorsement in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on your ambition and what are your global ambitions for your brand, right? But this is a very important area. And also, that's why we also have, as part of our membership base, we have quite a few of our consultants, lawyers, IP lawyers, okay, tax advisors. So people who can really provide specialist advice and service in this area. But the short answer is, of course, you would want to protect your branding and your trademark, particularly in the markets you go overseas, okay? And so at the outset, if your brand has regional ambitions or international ambitions, you should start planning and mapping out how you want to go about that IP strategy, and take advice from the necessary consultants, lawyers, because it can be quite a costly exercise, you know, doing the trademarks in multiple countries. So, and of course, there are certain countries where it's very important that you do it before you go to those countries.
Like China, right? The next day.
I didn't say that, but
Okay, I'll be the bad person. You're the president, you have to be the good one. I'll be the bad person. Like, you know, in China, always people say that if you distribute a product there today, tomorrow you see something similar, or maybe better and cheaper than yours.
So it's definitely worthwhile to go and protect your branding, but it can be quite a costly exercise. Yes.
But it's like 长痛不如短痛, right? 痛一次, then you can go very far, right? Great. Okay. So yeah, that's indeed pretty important. And actually, Singapore is actually really doing a lot, especially the government as well. Besides, just now you mentioned things like a PCP program by, you know, Workforce Singapore, and we have the WSQ courses by SkillsFuture and stuff like that. And just recently, just last week itself, Parliament also just amended the Copyright Act 22.1, where it introduced in the Parliament itself on 6 July. And how will this actually impact the IP and franchising and licensing?
Okay, I mean, the Copyright Act, I mean, it applies more towards licensing type of arrangements. Okay, so from the little that I know about the Copyright Act, it really is, of course, it went through consultations before it was passed, the amendments. But really, the amendments was just to clean up the wording, to simplify, and provide more clarity on how to go about the copyrights. Okay, so I think the important thing to note is this. You know, as we said earlier, IP is very important for franchise businesses when they go international.
Yep.
So we also work very closely with
IPOS, right? Yeah.
and ESG.
Yeah.
Okay, and over the last 3 decades, they have helped to internationalize and get companies to go overseas. Okay, number one, to be competitive, to also protect their goodwill and trademark, and also to help them go overseas. So what I would do is encourage, make sure that your brands, you work with IPOS, also utilize all the available grants that ESG has in this area, and especially if you want to go overseas.
Yeah, before actually having this session, I was talking to a few of my small business owner friends, right? Some of them asked me this question. So, how many countries should we trademark as a start? I mean, Singapore, yes, IPOS can also help for overseas, but what is the limit, right? It's like, example, I register my company name as abc.com and .sg. Do I also do like .my, .cn, you know, and go on and on and on and on? Is there a certain guideline?
I think don't overdo it lah. I mean, you know, sometimes you just, if you go to all the different permutations, that's why I say it can become a very costly strategy, right? And when you start doing these things and you want to protect a certain market, there's a certain time frame, right, to actually prove and that you're actually in the market. Otherwise, you're spending money protecting it and you actually haven't even gone in there. So have a proper planning approach. And I would say, don't go overboard. Take it step by step. So, one, you have to work out your roadmap. How many countries over what period of time? And then from there, which countries are then maybe an order of priority. And then from there, the time frame. So that's the way I would do it. Not go all out and start to protect everything over multiple countries, because that would just be too costly.
Yeah, I think by the time you expand, you don't have money to expand already. Everything is spent on trademark. Great. Okay, so next one. Outlook of Asia's franchising landscape and how Singapore as a brand can, as a headquarter as well, can really stand out. I know that a lot of people, like recently I attended this Merchant Association event. So what happened is they actually says that because of a Singapore brand, a lot of people are actually willing to work with us. Is that true in the global space since you are so well traveled?
I mean, definitely. I think Singapore has really gone from strength to strength. We can see that, right? Especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And now it's attracted a lot of multinationals and big companies willing to relocate. Of course, it helps that, you know, I mean, there are tax incentives available, right?
And importantly, the GIP to get a PR.
Yeah, correct. So all these things that the government has been able to leverage on to make Singapore even more attractive. So as an HQ, I mean, no doubt, I think, especially regional, it kind of makes sense. Especially now that, you know, Hong Kong has its own sets of issues. It's made Singapore, as long as companies can overcome the fact that Singapore is quite an expensive place to live and operate. That's the only maybe downside, right? The rest of it, Singapore has it in spades, right? Strong IP regime, logistics, finance, it's a hub, you know, it has pretty much everything. The only thing is maybe the cost of doing business here.
So would that be in a way that, okay, like back then, right, especially during the blockchain ICO craze, you know, the initial coin offering craze, there's a lot of companies overseas, like from China, from Russia and all that. They will come to Singapore and register a tech company, and they claim that they are a Singapore company and they sell their coins or project or whichever raise fund overseas. Do you see a trend like that a lot of overseas brands are coming into Singapore to like chope as a brand, register themselves as a Singapore brand, then going overseas again?
I mean, if the branding is strong, people will always try to be opportunistic, right? And it's not just in that area. It could be in anything. You see, food companies, manufacturers coming here. They want to use the Singapore brand. They want to set up base here. Anything related to Singapore, they try to play on the branding of Singapore, right? So for sure, there will be this type of companies coming in.
Actually, recently I noticed this thing because of COVID. We used to always stay at home and all that, right? So I always go grocery shopping and I check the packaging from time to time. There's this word. It's not made in Singapore. It's packaged in Singapore or packed in Singapore. So what does that mean? Is it trying to leverage on the brand as well?
Yeah, I mean, so the wording of the so packed in Singapore doesn't necessarily mean because it could be a company from overseas, but they want to leverage on the Singapore brand, so it's packed for them in Singapore.
Yeah.
But there are other countries, like for example Australia, that have become more stringent, and they don't accept that, right? So they will request that where it's made from. So the food, you have to actually say where's the origin, where is it, the majority of the product, where is it made from. So it cannot be packed in Singapore lah. So if it's a Malaysian company that has a co-packing or agreement to pack it in Singapore, but it's actually made in Malaysia, then Australia requires that the packaging says it's made in Malaysia.
Yeah.
It cannot be packed in Singapore.
And like for my earring, this earring itself, right? When I bought it, it's written as design in Korea. So is that legit or?
Well,
I mean, how did they even go through the?
So obviously, probably your earring is made in the country that you had mentioned earlier,
which is in China,
right?
but designs
so
from
of course,
elsewhere.
design in Korea sounds so much nicer, right? And you can probably charge a few more dollars because of that. But that's the way companies do it lah. Some companies.
So in the word of licensing, it's okay, is it? For us to say things like pack in Singapore, design in Korea, yeah.
It's all about labeling requirements, huh?
Yeah.
So, which can be country specific. So as I mentioned earlier, Australia is quite stringent on that. And that's how they get around it lah. Because they want to see the origin, the actual origin.
Yes.
So then you just have to comply to the country that you're exporting or country that you are selling your product. You just have to comply with the packaging requirements there.
Yeah.
Labeling requirements.
Yes. Okay, so seems like there's a lot of opportunity out there for all our friends. I'm the bad one giving you some ideas and all. Okay, we come to the last question for today, and right now on my Facebook itself, I already have 3 questions. Any more friends on Zoom and Facebook? If you have anything that you'd like to ask, feel free to type it down into the chat box, okay? So the last question here, steps to bring new idea to the table in this endemic business world in Asia. So I actually recently was Googling, Andrew's article and all that, and I saw that there's, I think it's the Pete, right, who interviewed you about this topic itself. Okay, so share with us, what do you think? What are the steps to bring new ideas and innovative ones, especially during this very uncertain period of time?
Well, I did say earlier that disruption brings opportunities. And in fact, in times of crisis and disruption, that's probably the best time for innovation and to test out new ideas. Okay, so one way to do it is people can use a kind of design thinking methodology. So take a more of a bite-sized approach to test bed new ideas. Okay, so there's a few different steps on doing that lah. So you want to do a design thinking approach. First, you have to, of course, understand that specific target customer. So if there's a certain level of disruption, you need to identify a customer needs, a certain target customer needs, right? Define that. See what the challenges are.
Yeah.
And then the ideation process, ideate, brainstorm. You come up with a creative solution. Okay, so out of like, say, for example, 100 ideas, you just pick your top 1 to 3 ideas. Then after that, you prototype. Okay, create the prototyping of your 1 to 3 ideas. Okay, take it through a process lah, feedback, focus group, whatever, non-target customers, all that process. Then after that, of course, you test pilot. Okay, so then you test pilot that. So that's how you can do that lah, to come up with new ideas during this very eventful period. Then what I would say, in Singapore, the government has been very helpful to startups and businesses, leverage on government support.
Yeah.
And then once again, FLA is here to help you facilitate that and to help you with, whatever government support will help you with that process. Okay?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing with all our friends right here for one of the case study that I recently encountered, because I've been in the consulting space for many, many years. Like they mentioned government grants, and they're like certified consultant like us. We are independent personnel. So what happened is this Liang Te company uncle, right, he's really an uncle. He said, I want to make another type of Liang Te, right? But this Liang Te will add in the English medicine inside as well. So what he did is he actually partnered with a pharmacist that does nutrition and all that. So what they put is they put in like clove and all these kind of items, and they really made up a new version of Liang Te that comes with Chinese and English herbs. And what happened is, the best part is, they went to Enterprise Singapore, and through the Liang Te company, because it's a very traditional business, they used that company to apply for a test bedding and pilot grant, and they managed to get it. And now they are test bedding the new product itself, which is a 中西合并. The uncles told me 中西合并两碟. So it's the English and the Chinese version of 两碟 itself. So that's something that is quite amazing.
Creativity, right? So I mean, I think that's great. That's wonderful.
Cool. Okay, so we come to the last part right here, which is actually the Q&A. So just now, Andrew actually mentioned that, yes, if you have any burning questions, feel free to typing down to the chat itself. And meanwhile, as you can see down below, there's actually the FLA, which is actually the association's website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also the contact details as well. And it's so nice that there's actually a contact point, Thomas, okay? I think he'll be very busy after this program. So you can feel free to contact them, because this the PCP program is something that's really, really good, because you can send your staff there and 90% of the salary is being covered for 6 months, I guess?
Yep.
You think so, but no worries. Okay, let's ask
Thomas,
the second
ask Thomas.
Ask Thomas, okay? All right, okay, let's start with the first question first over here. So we have Brian who asked this thing. Other than F&B, right, are you able to recommend some other franchise opportunity that you think is worth the effort?
Other than F&B,
Yeah.
I mean, I did mention about enrichment education as one. One of our members, I think our new member, and I think I've seen him in the Zoom, X Factor. He's recently got a lot of publicity in the newspaper. So I'd like to have a little shout out to X Factor, throwing X's.
Oh.
It's a growing business.
Yeah.
So you want an interesting, innovative concept? That is one.
Yeah, actually I heard one of my friend's friend, right, is dealing with badminton teaching. So because of COVID, some of the teachers cannot come back, some can come back and all that. She actually transformed her business into commission-based in terms of having them taking the lead. Same brand still, but they run their own programs. So it's something like a franchise also, in a way. Yeah, but quite interestingly, yeah. Okay, great. So you would recommend education, right?
Education, of course, yes.
Yeah, and all sorts of education. Okay, so there you go for Brian. And the last one, we have Chiu here, and she's saying that, I'm keen to bring in an overseas franchise. I obviously have to get approval from the overseas franchise. Where does the association comes in? That's the first question. And the second one is, do we need to get approval from the association as well?
Approval for bringing it in, is it? No, I mean, some of our members are established brands from overseas. We have people like, 7-Eleven is one, okay? So, we have like there's McDonald's, there's all these franchises from overseas, Popeyes, okay? These are established brands overseas. So for sure, you want to bring in a brand from overseas, an established one. Singapore is a great test bed for Asia, and many brands do that. What I would suggest, you don't need approvals from FLA, but what I would suggest is you do work with FLA. We can help you get that started here in Singapore by linking you up with the relevant people and just to help you with general advice. So please do get into contact with FLA.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so Indeed, the anthem is already there, and time really passed really fast. So this time round, for those who have already followed our program, I'm pretty sure every time we will have like 2 questions for you. You have to answer it and win yourself some prize. And there's always a lot of chats below that we have to always follow through, and sometimes we couldn't find you, okay? So what is we're going to do slightly differently for today itself is we actually have this QR code where you just have to scan in, and there's actually 2 questions for you to answer, okay? And remember that if you'd like to win yourself a $10 NTUC voucher, what you need to do is to like and share this video itself, okay? And not to worry, you don't have to answer it right now. We are giving you 3 working days to answer it from the date of today itself. And once if you manage to be one of our lucky winner, we'll be in touch with you to give you the voucher itself, okay? So happy having the quiz itself, okay? So we come to the end for today's program. Okay, so Andrew, thank you so much for being here. But any last point of words you would like to share with us, especially now we are already marching towards July soon, and our COVID and vaccination has been doing so well. We're supposed to hit 2/3 before August, but I think we almost overshot it already. So what do you think about quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2024, 2021 for Singapore?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was involved in a Malaysia Economic Conference as a speaker this morning, actually. And, the state in Malaysia is much different than Singapore. I mean, there are over 13,000 cases a day now, whereas Singapore here is very much under control.
Yeah.
So I would say that Singapore is really poised to open up very soon. And so, and in speaking with various government people, they want to be first out of the gates. Okay, that is really the mantra. So I guess people need to ready themselves. Companies get to ready themselves to be first out of the gates and seize the opportunity when Singapore opens up again.
Yes, and we look forward to opening up on quarter 4 for 2021. Thank you so much, Andrew. Okay, so thank you so much for all our friends as well. We'll see you in the next program for Market Outlook. Stay safe and good night.